Black man accepts a job as a racist millionaire woman's driver, and everything changes between them. Darnell Johnson looked at the business card in his trembling hands while waiting in the reception of the most luxurious office in Chicago. 3 months after losing everything in the flood that devastated his neighborhood in Cicero, this was his last chance to get a job that paid enough for his daughter's medical expenses. The secretary looked him up and down when he mentioned being there for the private driver position. He knew exactly why she hesitated before calling the boss. At 42, Darnell was already used to those looks, but now he needed to swallow his pride. Jasmine had been hospitalized for 2 weeks, and the medicines couldn't be delayed. "Mrs. Victoria Parker will see you now," said the secretary, pointing to a marble corridor that seemed to stretch endlessly. Darnell straightened the borrowed tie and walked toward the office. Each step echoed in the oppressive silence of that environment that screamed wealth. When the door opened, an elegant woman of about 35 analyzed him as if inspecting a defective product. "So you're the candidate," said Victoria, without looking up from the papers on her desk. "I hope you understand this isn't an ordinary position. I have very specific standards for those who work with me." "Yes, ma'am. I read all the requirements in the ad," replied Darnell, trying to keep his voice steady. "Read?" She raised an eyebrow as if that was surprising. "Well, let's get straight to the point. I need someone punctual, discreet, and who knows their place. I don't tolerate familiarity or unnecessary conversations during trips. Are you capable of following these simple rules?" The way she said, "these simple rules," carried a tone Darnell knew well. It was the same tone he'd heard since childhood, always accompanied by the subliminal message that he should be grateful for any opportunity. "Perfectly capable, Mrs. Parker." "Great. The salary is $4,000, plus transportation allowance. No proportional 13th salary or extra benefits. Take it or leave it." Darnell clenched his fists inside his pockets. $4,000 was less than half of what he earned as a civil engineer before the company went bankrupt, but it was 3 times more than any other job he could find quickly. "I accept," he said, swallowing what remained of his dignity. "Excellent. You start tomorrow at 6 in the morning. And one more thing." She looked directly at him for the first time. "I expect you to wear white gloves while driving. A matter of hygiene." Darnell felt the blood rush to his head, but he thought of his daughter lying in the hospital bed, pale and dependent on expensive medications. He thought of the bills piling up and the empty refrigerator at home. "Understood," he murmured. "Great. Jennifer Miller, my secretary, will give you all the details. Oh, and Darnell." She said his name as if it was something unpleasant in her mouth. "Don't forget that I work with very important people. Your appearance and behavior reflect directly on me. I expect you to know how to conduct yourself properly." When Darnell left that office, he carried not just a new job, but also a humiliation that burned in his chest like acid. Victoria Parker hadn't been subtle in her insinuations. Every word, every look, every calculated pause made it clear that she saw him as inferior. The first day arrived faster than Darnell would have liked. At 5:30 in the morning, he stood in front of the mansion gate in Gold Coast, wearing the most decent suit he owned and the white gloves he'd bought with the last dollars in his pocket. The doorman looked at him with disdain before opening the gate. "Service entrance is around the side," he grumbled, pointing to a narrow path that went around the property. Darnell walked to the garage where a gleaming black luxury sedan awaited him. The car was worth more than he would earn in 10 years. As he adjusted the mirrors and seat, he tried to focus on the positives. At least it was a vehicle in perfect condition, with air conditioning and a state-of-the-art sound system. At 7 o'clock sharp, Victoria appeared in the garage. She wore an impeccable navy blue outfit and carried a purse that probably cost more than many people's salaries. Her brown hair was tied in an elegant bun, and she wore sunglasses even inside the garage. "Good morning, Mrs. Parker," greeted Darnell, opening the rear door of the car. She got in without responding to the greeting, as if he were invisible. Darnell closed the door and walked to the driver's seat, feeling like a ghost in his own life. "First appointment is at the downtown office," said Victoria, scrolling through her phone. "Then we have lunch at the Waldorf Astoria with some investors. In the afternoon, Michigan Avenue Mall for some shopping and then the gym. I hope you memorized the addresses Jennifer gave you. Yes, ma'am. And Darnell, she said without looking up from her phone, during the drives, I prefer complete silence. No radio, music, or conversation. I need to focus on my commitments. The Monday morning traffic in Chicago was a nightmare, but Darnell knew the city like the back of his hand. He navigated the congested streets with the skill of someone who drove a taxi on weekends during college. Through the rearview mirror, he watched Victoria typing furiously on her phone, speaking quietly with people who clearly annoyed her. "No, Maxwell, I won't accept this," she said into the phone, her voice full of authority. "Either we close with the amounts I set or we look for other partners. There's no negotiation." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. During the first week, Darnell established a routine that protected him from the constant humiliations. He woke up at 5, drank strong black coffee, and arrived at the mansion always 15 minutes early. Victoria was never late, but she also never thanked him for his punctuality. The drives were long and silent. Darnell learned to identify his boss's mood by her size, the rhythm of her typing on the phone, and the way she tapped her fingers on the leather seat. When she was especially irritated, she would talk on the phone about incompetent employees and people who don't know their place. "Jennifer, cancel my meeting with the cleaning staff," she said during one of those calls. "I don't have time to listen to complaints about salaries. If they're not satisfied, let them find another job. There are plenty of people wanting to work." Darnell gripped the steering wheel tighter, but kept a neutral expression. Every word was a stab, especially because he knew Victoria spoke loudly on purpose, so he would hear and understand the message. The most difficult moment came on Thursday of the second week. Victoria had a business lunch at a sophisticated restaurant in the Upper East Side. Darnell dropped her off at the entrance and was instructed to wait in the parking lot. "It might take a few hours," she said, adjusting her purse on her shoulder. "Stay in the car. I don't want to see you wandering around the restaurant or going to inappropriate places." The March sun was scorching, and the parking lot had no shade. Darnell remained in the car with the windows open, trying to cool off with the hot breeze that came in. After 2 hours, the thirst and heat began to become unbearable. He got out of the car and looked for a nearby faucet or water fountain, but found nothing. The restaurant security guard watched him with suspicion. Darnell returned to the car, feeling his shirt sticking to his back from sweat. Another hour passed. His hands trembled slightly and his head began to throb. He thought about calling Victoria, but remembered the clear instructions not to bother her during important engagements. When she finally appeared, 4 hours later, Darnell could barely keep his eyes open. The world spun slightly, and his wobbly legs barely supported him as he stood to open the door. "Wow, this heat is unbearable," commented Victoria, getting into the air-conditioned car. "Lucky the restaurant has excellent air conditioning. Are you okay? You look a bit pale." "I'm fine, ma'am," Darnell lied, starting the car with trembling hands. "Great. Now let's go to the mall. I have some important shopping to do." During the drive to the mall, Darnell fought against the waves of dizziness hitting him. His vision began to blur, and he had to stop at a traffic light longer than necessary to regain focus. "Darnell, you're driving strangely," complained Victoria. "Concentrate on the traffic." "Sorry, ma'am." At the mall, she instructed him to wait for her again in the parking lot. Darnell barely managed to get out of the car to open the door for her. His legs gave way and he had to lean on the hood to avoid falling. "Darnell?" Victoria's voice sounded distant, as if coming from far away. It was the last thing he remembered before everything went dark. Darnell woke up in a hospital bed with an IV in his arm and a young doctor checking his vital signs. The first thing he thought of was his job. The second was Jasmine. "How do you feel?" asked the doctor, a black woman around 30 years old, with kind eyes and a comforting smile. "I need to get back to work," said Darnell, trying to sit up. "Easy. You fainted from severe dehydration and heat exhaustion. You need to be observed for a few hours." "I can't. My boss must be furious, and I have a daughter in the hospital who depends on my salary." The doctor looked at him with an expression Darnell couldn't decipher. There was something familiar about those eyes, but he couldn't place what. "Your boss is in the waiting room," she said. "She's the one who brought you here." She seemed quite upset. Upset? As if she were afraid of something. The doctor hesitated. "Don't worry. I'll talk to her and explain that you can't work for the rest of the day. What's your daughter's name? And which hospital is she in?" "Jasmine Johnson. She's admitted to St. Mary's Hospital in Southside. Why do you ask?" The doctor seemed to swallow something. She made some notes on the chart and left the room without answering. Outside, Darnell could hear muffled voices. One was clearly Victoria's, but there was something different in her tone. It wasn't the authoritative, cold voice he knew. It sounded almost concerned. "Doctor, is he going to be okay?" Victoria's voice came through the door. "He'll make a full recovery," replied a male voice Darnell didn't recognize. "But I need to warn you about something serious. This kind of situation could constitute inadequate working conditions. If he wanted to, he could file a lawsuit that would cost you dearly." There was a long silence. I didn't think about that," said Victoria, her voice softer. "I just was focused on my commitments." "Victoria, you know I admire your dedication to work, but this went too far. The man almost had severe heat stroke from being 4 hours under the sun without water." Darnell closed his eyes, pretending to sleep, when the room door opened. Victoria entered accompanied by an older doctor with greying hair. "How is he, Dr. Henry?" she asked, approaching the bed. "Stable, but he'll need rest, at least 2 days off work." Of course. Whatever it takes." There was something in Victoria's voice that Darnell had never heard before. It was almost as if she was afraid. "Victoria, I need to ask you a direct question," said the doctor. "Did you know he was waiting in the sun for 4 hours?" I told him to wait in the parking lot." She hesitated. "I didn't think it would be a problem." In the middle of March, in the Chicago heat with no access to water or shade, this is serious negligence regarding an employee's health. Darnell could feel Victoria's discomfort, even with his eyes closed. She was shifting restlessly beside the bed. "Doctor, can he sue me for this?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Absolutely. And he'd win easily. You're lucky he didn't suffer permanent damage." After a few minutes of hushed conversation among the doctors, Darnell heard footsteps walking away. When he opened his eyes, he found Victoria alone in the room, sitting in the chair next to the bed. She was staring at her own hands, as if lost in thought. "Mrs. Parker?" said Darnell, pretending to be waking up. She quickly lifted her head, as if caught doing something wrong. "Darnell, how are you feeling?" she asked, and there was a genuine concern in her voice that surprised him. "Better. I'm very sorry for the trouble. I know you must have missed important appointments because of me." "No, don't worry about that," she said, avoiding his gaze. "The important thing is that you're okay." They remained silent for a few moments. Darnell could see that Victoria was wrestling with some internal conflict. "Darnell, I need to ask you something," she finally said. "Do you intend to take any legal action because of what happened today?" Ah, that was it. She was afraid of a lawsuit. Darnell looked at her for a long moment, seeing for the first time an insecure woman behind the facade of power. "No, ma'am. I just want to return to work as soon as possible. I need the job." The relief on Victoria's face was instant and, in a way, almost pathetic. Of course. And Darnell?" She hesitated. "Maybe we can make some adjustments to the routine, so situations like this don't happen again." "If you think it's necessary." "I do. Very necessary." When Victoria left the hospital that afternoon, Darnell kept thinking about what he had witnessed. For the first time, he had seen fear in her eyes. Not fear of him, specifically, but fear of the consequences of her actions. It was a start, even if a small one. The young doctor returned to the room shortly before discharge. "How are you feeling now?" she asked. "Much better. Thank you for your care, Doctor." "Tamara. Dr. Tamara Williams." Darnell looked at her more closely. Johnson was a common last name, but there was something in her eyes. "Sorry for asking, Doctor, but do you happen to know someone named Jasmine Johnson? My daughter is hospitalized and—" Marina's face completely transformed. The professional mask fell away, revealing an expression of pure shock. Jasmine Johnson, 15 years old, hospitalized with respiratory complications? Yes. Do you know her? Tamara closed her eyes for a moment, as if making a difficult decision. I'm the doctor in charge of her case, she finally said. I had no idea you were the father. The last name on the chart was different, and my full name is Darnell Johnson Washington, but I just use Johnson at work. I see. Darnell, I need to tell you something about Jasmine's condition. She needs some specific medications for the treatment and, well, the basic health insurance doesn't cover everything. Darnell's heart raced. It was exactly what he feared to hear. How much will it cost? It's approximately $3,000 per month, for at least 6 months. Darnell felt the world spin again, but this time it wasn't from dehydration. It was the crushing weight of reality. Even with the new job, I couldn't afford that amount. Doctor, are you sure there's no alternative? Unfortunately not. But Darnell, there's something I can do to help. I know some assistance programs. No, Darnell interrupted her. Thank you, but I don't accept charity. I'll find a way. Tamara watched him for a long moment, as if weighing something. All right, but if you change your mind, come find me. And Darnell? Your daughter is a very brave girl. She asks about you every day. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Darnell returned to work 2 days later, finding a visibly different Victoria. She still maintained her authoritative posture, but there was a hesitation in her words that hadn't been there before. Darnell, glad you're feeling better, she said when he arrived on Monday morning. I've made some changes to the schedule. Now you'll have proper breaks for rest and meals. Thank you, Ma'am. And another thing. She avoided looking directly at him. I had a small refrigerator installed in the staff break area. Always keep cold water available. It was a small gesture but meaningful. Darnell nodded, realizing that the fear of the lawsuit had, at least temporarily, humanized his boss. During the following weeks, the routine became more tolerable. Victoria still kept her distance and formality, but the direct humiliations decreased. She seemed to be constantly weighing her own words, as if afraid of crossing some invisible line. It was during one of these weeks that Darnell began noticing details about Victoria he'd ignored before. When she thought nobody was looking, her expression became almost melancholy. She spoke on the phone with her husband in a way that suggested marital problems, and often cancelled social engagements to keep working late. One evening, while waiting for her to finish a meeting that had run overtime, Darnell saw her through the office window. Victoria was alone, looking at the lit-up city below, with an expression of profound loneliness. Everyone has their problems, thought Darnell. But he quickly pushed away any feeling of empathy. A millionaire's problems couldn't compare to those of a desperate father trying to save his daughter. The real change began on a rainy April afternoon. Darnell was waiting for Victoria to finish a medical appointment when a teenager approached the car. She was thin, with brown skin and curly hair tied in a simple ponytail. She wore clean but visibly worn clothes. "Excuse me, do you work for Mrs. Victoria Parker?" asked the girl. Darnell immediately became alert. It wasn't common for strangers to approach the car. "Why do you want to know?" "My name is Brianna Johnson Washington. I'm your daughter." Darnell's world stopped. Brianna was Jasmine's twin sister, but had grown up with their maternal grandmother in the countryside. After Darnell's wife passed away, it was decided it would be better for the girls to stay separated temporarily until he could get financially stable. That was 3 years ago. "Brianna, what are you doing here? How did you find me?" "Dr. Tamara told me where you worked. Dad, we need to talk." Darnell looked nervously toward the building where Victoria was. She could come out at any moment. "Honey, this isn't the place or time." "Dad, Grandma died," said Brianna, the words hitting Darnell like a punch to the stomach. Mrs. Elaine had raised the twins in their early years, when Darnell was still in college. After his wife died, she offered to care for one of the girls until he got stable. Darnell never imagined he wouldn't get a chance to say goodbye. How? When? Last week. He had a heart attack in his sleep. Dad, I have nowhere else to go. The house was rented, and I don't have money to keep paying for it. Darnell felt the weight of another responsibility crushing his shoulders. There was no way he could support 2 daughters, especially with Jasmine being sick. Brianna, Dad, I didn't come here to be a burden, she interrupted him. I came to ask for work. Anything. Cleaning, organizing, whatever. I know Mrs. Parker is rich and must need employees. Sweetheart, that's not how it works. Please, Dad, I have no one else. And Jasmine needs me too. We've always protected each other, even when we were apart. Now more than ever. Before Darnell could answer, he saw Victoria coming out of the building. She stopped when she saw the scene, Darnell talking with a teenager by the car. Darnell, she said, approaching. Is there a problem? No, ma'am. Just a misunderstanding. Victoria looked at Brianna with that analytical expression Darnell knew well. But this time there was something different. Maybe it was genuine curiosity. And you are? She asked directly to Brianna. Brianna Johnson Washington, Mr. Darnell's daughter, the girl replied, raising her chin with a dignity that even impressed Victoria. I see. Victoria seemed to process the information. There was a moment of uncomfortable silence. Darnell could see the gears turning in Victoria's head, probably wondering how this situation could affect his job. Mrs. Parker, Brianna said suddenly, would you need an assistant? I know how to organize papers, clean offices, make phone calls. I learned a lot taking care of my grandmother. The girl's audacity left Darnell speechless. Victoria also seemed surprised, but not angry. It was almost as if she admired Brianna's courage. How old are you? Victoria asked. 15. I know I'm young, but I'm responsible, and I learn fast. Brianna, you can't, Darnell tried to intervene. Let her speak, said Victoria, raising her hand. Go on, Brianna. Ma'am, I'm not asking for charity. I'm offering work in exchange for a fair salary. I know my father is an excellent employee, so you must have learned that our family values dedication and honesty. Victoria looked from Darnell to Brianna, clearly intrigued. Where do you live? At the moment, nowhere. That's why I need this job so much. Darnell saw something shift in Victoria's face. It was subtle, but it was there, an expression he had never seen before, almost as if she was seeing something of herself in Brianna's desperate determination. Get in the car, Victoria finally said. We'll talk more at the office. The whole way to the office, Darnell was tense, imagining how this situation could blow up in their faces. Brianna remained silent in the back seat, but he could feel the determination radiating from her. At the office, Victoria led Brianna to a smaller meeting room while Darnell waited in the reception area. 40 minutes later, both came out of the room. Darnell, your daughter will start tomorrow as a junior administrative assistant, Victoria announced. Part-time $1,200 a month with the possibility of a raise based on performance. Darnell was speechless. It wasn't exactly what he had planned, but it was a solution to a problem that had seemed impossible to solve. Mom, I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet, said Victoria. Your daughter will have to prove she deserves the opportunity. I don't accept incompetence or laziness. I won't let you down, said Brianna, extending her hand to Victoria with adult seriousness. Victoria shook the girl's hand, and Darnell swore he saw a small smile on his boss's lips. In the following weeks, Brianna proved to be everything she had promised. She always arrived 15 minutes early, organized files with impressive efficiency, and treated everyone with respectful courtesy. Victoria, who initially observed her with skepticism, began giving the girl greater responsibilities. Darnell noticed that Brianna's presence was changing the office dynamics. The girl had a natural way of dealing with people that even Victoria respected. When clients grew impatient in the reception area, Brianna could calm them with a combination of efficiency and charisma that impressed everyone. More importantly, the extra money was allowing Darnell to pay for Jasmine's medications. The girl's condition had stabilized, and Dr. Tamara reported encouraging progress in the treatment. But it was on a May afternoon that everything changed definitively. Darnell was washing the car in the garage when he heard screams coming from the office. He rushed inside and found Victoria sitting on the floor of her office, breathing heavily, her hands trembling uncontrollably. "Help! I can't breathe," she murmured, between desperate attempts to draw air. It was clearly a panic attack. Darnell had seen his wife go through similar episodes in her final months of life. "Mrs. Parker, look at me," he said, kneeling beside her. "Breathe with me, slowly, in through your nose, out through your mouth. Can't the walls closing in?" Darnell looked around and noticed the office windows were closed and the air conditioning had stopped working. The environment was stuffy and claustrophobic. "Brianna!" he shouted. "Open all the windows, quick!" The girl appeared immediately and began opening the windows, allowing the fresh afternoon air to enter. Darnell continued guiding Victoria through breathing exercises, his voice calm and firm. "That's right. You're safe. It's just a panic attack. It will pass." Gradually, Victoria's breathing normalized. She remained seated on the floor for a few minutes, clearly embarrassed. "Sorry, this shouldn't have happened." "Everyone has their weaknesses," Darnell said simply. "There's nothing wrong with that." Victoria looked at him as if seeing him for the first time. It was no longer the gaze of someone seeing a subordinate employee, but of someone recognizing another human being. "How did you know what to do?" she asked. "My wife suffered from anxiety. I learned how to help her." "Your wife, is she still—" "She died 3 years ago. Cancer." The information seemed to hit Victoria like a slap. She closed her eyes, absorbing the fact that she had been mistreating a man who had lost his wife and was struggling to care for a sick daughter. "Darnell, I didn't know." "There was no reason for you to know." They sat in silence for a few minutes. Brianna had discreetly withdrawn, leaving them alone. "Why did you help me?" Victoria finally asked. "After how I treated you, you had every right to leave me there, suffering." Darnell thought about the question for a moment. Because when someone is suffering, nothing else matters. Not race, not social class, not personal differences. Only the suffering and our ability to help matter. Victoria absorbed his words in silence. When she finally stood up, there was something fundamentally different in her eyes. "Darnell, can we talk?" she asked. "For real this time. Not as boss and employee, but as people." Darnell nodded, and they both sat in the office armchairs. It was the first time Darnell had sat there as something other than an employee. "I want to tell you about my claustrophobia," Victoria said, "and maybe you'll better understand why I am the way I am." And for the first time since they'd met, Victoria Parker looked directly into Darnell Johnson's eyes and spoke as one person to another. "I grew up in a slum in Englewood," she began, the words coming out with difficulty. "My mother worked as a cleaner in 3 different houses to support us. We lived in a room 2 meters by 3 meters without windows, 4 people in a space smaller than this bathroom here." Darnell watched her, surprised by the revelation. "When I was 12, there was a fire in the shack next door. The flames spread quickly and we were trapped inside for hours. My mother covered me with her own body to protect me from the smoke. That's when I developed claustrophobia." "How did you get out of there?" asked Darnell, genuinely interested. "By studying. My mother sold perfume on the street to pay for my private school. She said education was the only way to break the cycle of poverty. I studied by candlelight because we didn't have stable electricity." Victoria paused, looking out the window at the city below. "When I got my first job at a small company, I lied about my background. I made up a story about growing up middle class. I changed my accent, my way of dressing, even my way of walking. I turned into someone else." "And did it work?" "It worked too well. I was promoted quickly, always pretending to be someone I wasn't. Until I met Maxwell, my husband. He's from a traditional family, a business heir. When we got married, I finally had access to the world I'd always envied." Darnell began to understand the complexity of the situation. "But you kept pretending." "I had to. Maxwell's world doesn't tolerate people like me, like we were. Every time I see someone who reminds me of where I came from, I need to create distance. It's a form of self-preservation. even if it means humiliating innocent people. Victoria lowered her head, clearly ashamed. I know it's no excuse, but yes, every time I mistreat someone like you, I'm trying to convince myself that I really belong in this world. It's pathetic, I know. Darnell remained silent for a long moment, processing everything he'd heard. Mrs. Parker. Victoria. You can call me Victoria. Victoria, I understand where this need to protect yourself comes from, but you've already achieved all this. You're successful, wealthy, respected. Why do you still feel the need to prove something? Because I'm afraid they'll find out the truth and take everything away from me, she admitted. I'm afraid Maxwell will leave me if he finds out where I came from. I'm afraid my clients will discard me if they discover I wasn't born privileged. What if they find out you achieved all this on your own merit? Wouldn't that be reason to admire you even more? Victoria looked at him as if it were the first time someone had suggested that possibility. I never thought of it that way. Victoria, you know my story. I lost everything. I'm rebuilding from scratch. If anyone should be ashamed here, it would be me. But I've learned that our origin doesn't define our worth. What we do with the opportunities we have is what matters. They talked until the end of the afternoon, and Darnell discovered that behind the cold and authoritarian facade, Victoria was a deeply insecure woman, fighting ghosts from the past. When they finally said goodbye that night, there was something different between them. Not exactly friendship, but the beginning of mutual respect. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. In the following weeks, the transformation in Victoria was gradual but noticeable. She began greeting Darnell in the morning, asked about Jasmine with genuine interest, and treated Brianna not just as any employee, but as someone whose potential she recognized. Darnell also started to see Victoria in a new light. He noticed how she worked tirelessly, made tough decisions with courage, and how, despite her flaws, she had built a business empire practically from scratch. The turning point came one June morning when Darnell noticed that Victoria seemed especially tense. Throughout the drive to the office, she stayed silent, staring out the window with a worried expression. Victoria, may I ask if everything's all right? Said Darnell, using her name at work for the first time. I have a very important meeting today, she replied, with foreign investors. If I can't close this deal, I could lose a significant part of the company. Would you like to talk about it? Victoria hesitated for a moment, then sighed. They're Japanese investors. Very formal, very traditional. Maxwell was supposed to be there, but he cancelled at the last minute for a golf tournament with his friends. And that's a problem? For them, maybe. They're not used to negotiating with women, especially women who, well, women like me. Darnell realized she was referring to her background. Victoria, you're one of the most respected businesswomen in Chicago. Your competence speaks for itself. It's not always enough in this world, Darnell. When they arrived at the office, Darnell saw the Japanese investors in the lobby. They were 3 middle-aged men, impeccably dressed, speaking quietly among themselves. One of them looked at Darnell with an expression he knew well, the look of someone who didn't expect to see a black driver at a company of that caliber. During the morning, Darnell noticed the meeting wasn't going well. Through the glass windows of the conference room, he could see Victoria gesturing, trying to persuade the investors, while they maintained skeptical expressions. By mid-afternoon, the investors left the room looking unsatisfied. Darnell saw Victoria following them to the lobby, clearly frustrated. Gentlemen, I'm sure we can reach an agreement, she was saying. Our proposal is solid, and the numbers speak for themselves. Ms. Parker, said one of the investors in English, which Darnell could understand reasonably well, we appreciate your presentation, but we have some concerns about the stability of the company's leadership. What kind of concerns? Well, traditionally, we prefer to work with companies that have more established leadership structures, with strong family histories and deep roots in the business community. Darnell felt his blood boil. They were basically saying Victoria wasn't good enough because she didn't come from a traditional family. It was exactly the kind of prejudice he faced daily, but on a different scale. Gentlemen, Darnell stood up from his chair in the lobby. Forgive the interruption, but I couldn't help overhearing. The investors looked at him, surprised. Victoria also seemed shocked by his intervention. "I've worked for Ms. Parker for a few months," continued Darnell in fluent English, "and I can attest that she is one of the most competent and principled leaders I've ever known." One of the investors raised his eyebrows, clearly impressed by Darnell's English. "She built this company from scratch. She didn't inherit it from family," Darnell went on. "Every client, every contract, every success was earned through hard work and dedication. If you're looking for someone with deep roots, you won't find roots deeper than those of someone who planted the tree themselves." The silence in the lobby was palpable. Victoria looked at him with a mixture of shock and gratitude. "Besides," Darnell continued, "in a global economy, it's not family traditions that guarantee success, but the ability to adapt and innovate. And in that, Mrs. Parker is unmatched." One of the Japanese investors approached Darnell. "You are?" he asked in English. "Darnell Johnson. I work with Mrs. Parker." "Your background?" "Civil engineer, with a master's in project management." The investor looked from Darnell to Victoria, clearly reassessing his impressions. "Interesting," he murmured. "A leader who inspires that kind of loyalty in highly qualified employees." He turned to his colleagues, and they spoke quickly in Japanese. Darnell caught words like impressive, trust, and reconsider. "Mrs. Parker," said the group's leader, "we would like to reschedule our meeting for tomorrow. We need time to re-evaluate some aspects." After the investors left, Victoria and Darnell were alone in the reception area. She looked at him as if seeing a stranger. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "Because it was right, and because no one should be judged by their background, but by what they build with their own hands." "Darnell, you risked your job. If they had been offended, it would have been worth it. Some things are more important than job security." Victoria stepped closer to him, and Darnell saw tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said simply. No one ever stood up for me like that." "Then you've been working with the wrong people," Darnell replied. That evening, Victoria dismissed Darnell early and said she would drive herself home. As he was preparing to leave, she called out to him, "Darnell, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "Why didn't you tell me you were an engineer?" Darnell thought about the question for a moment. "Because you didn't ask, and because to you, I was just a driver. My background wouldn't have changed that." "It would have. I would have treated you with more respect from the start." "Victoria, that's the problem. Respect shouldn't depend on a degree or profession. It should be automatic, regardless of who a person is or what they do." She nodded slowly, absorbing the lesson. "You're right, and I still have a lot to learn." The next day, the Japanese investors returned with a proposal even better than the original. During the meeting, they made a point of praising the company's strong organizational culture and the inspiring loyalty that Victoria was able to generate in her team. When the contract was signed, representing millions in investments, Victoria knew that much of the success was due to Darnell's intervention. But more than that, she knew she had learned a valuable lesson about leadership and respect. That afternoon, she did something unprecedented. She invited Darnell to sit at her desk to talk as equals. "Darnell, I want to offer you a position in the company," she said. "Special Projects Coordinator, starting salary of $8,000 with room for growth." Darnell was silent for a long moment. "Victoria, I really appreciate the offer, but I need to ask you something. Are you offering this because you recognize my competence or because you feel guilty about what happened?" The question was direct and honest, typical of Darnell. Victoria thought carefully before answering. "Initially, it might have been guilt, but after today, after seeing how you handled the investors, it's because I recognize you would be valuable in any position, not as a favor, but as a smart investment." "And Brianna?" "Brianna will continue as my personal assistant with a raise, of course. She has proven to be indispensable." Darnell smiled for the first time since he started working there. "In that case, I accept, but on one condition." "What is it?" "I want to help you develop an inclusion program in the company. Not just for black people, but for any talented person coming from humble beginnings." Victoria extended her hand. "We have a deal." The following months brought profound changes for everyone involved. Darnell proved to be an exceptional coordinator, bringing innovation and efficiency to projects that were stuck. Brianna flourished in her new role, demonstrating a maturity and competence that impressed everyone. Jasmine was finally discharged from the hospital, fully recovered. The first thing she wanted to do was meet the Aunt Victoria that Brianna talked about so much. When the sisters reunited in the office on a Saturday afternoon, Victoria was moved to see how they complemented each other. "Now I understand where Brianna gets that strength from," said Victoria to Darnell, watching the twins organizing some files together. "They support each other. It's always been that way. Even when apart, they stayed connected. It's something special between sisters. It must be nice to have someone like that in your life," said Victoria with a hint of melancholy. Darnell looked at her. "You don't have siblings?" "I have a younger brother, but we lost touch when I changed my life. He didn't understand my choices." "It's never too late to reconnect." "Maybe, but I'm afraid he'll see me as the person I've become, not the person I was." "What if you just be yourself? The real person, not the persona you created?" Victoria considered Darnell's words. In recent weeks, she had begun questioning much of her life, especially after discovering that Maxwell, her husband, was having an affair with her best friend, Sharon. She found out by chance when Sharon forgot her phone in the office after a visit. A message from Maxwell appeared on the screen. "I can't pretend anymore. Victoria can't know about us yet, just a little longer." The discovery was devastating, not just because of the betrayal, but because of the hypocrisy. Maxwell, who always criticized her for her quirks and insecurities, had been lying to her for months. Sharon, who knew all her secrets and fears, was using that information against her. Victoria didn't tell anyone about the discovery. She kept up the facade for weeks, pretending everything was normal while planning her next move. But the pain was constant, eating away at her confidence and making it even harder to tell who was real and who was wearing a mask in her life. It was on an October night, after a particularly ugly argument with Maxwell about her lack of femininity and obsession with work, that Victoria arrived at the office in tears. It was almost midnight, and she thought she would be alone. But Darnell was there, finishing an urgent project due the next morning. When he saw her come in, with smeared makeup and shoulders slumped in pain, he didn't hesitate. "Victoria, what happened?" She tried to compose herself, but it was too late. Darnell had already seen her vulnerability. "It's nothing. Just personal problems. Do you want to talk? I don't want to bother you with my problems." "It's no bother. Sit here." Darnell pulled a chair for her and went to get a glass of water. When he returned, Victoria had started crying silently. "He's cheating on me," she said between sobs. "My husband. With my best friend." Darnell sat beside her, offering silent support. "How long have you known?" 3 weeks. And the worst part is that a part of me isn't even surprised. Maxwell always made me feel like I wasn't good enough, like he was doing me a favor by being with me. Victoria, that's not true. You know that, don't you?" "I don't know what's true in my life anymore. I spent so much time pretending to be someone else that sometimes I don't even know who I really am." Darnell was silent for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Want to know who you are? You're a woman who built an empire from nothing, who gave my daughter an opportunity when you could have simply ignored her, who's learning to let your defenses down to become a better person. That's who you are." But it wasn't enough for Maxwell. Maxwell is a fool, and that isn't a reflection of your worth, but of his inability to recognize what he has. Victoria looked at Darnell through her tears. "How can you be so wise after everything you've been through?" "Because I learned that suffering doesn't define us. What we do with it is what defines us." They talked until dawn. Victoria shared about years of marriage where she felt constantly judged and diminished. Darnell spoke about the pain of losing his wife and how he learned that genuine people stand by you in tough times. They don't abandon you when you need them most. "What are you going to do about Maxwell?" asked Darnell. "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to confront him, but another part is afraid he'll use it as an excuse to file for divorce and try to take half the company." "Whose name is the company under?" mostly mine. But he could claim he contributed to its growth during the marriage. Victoria, you need to talk to a lawyer, and you need to make decisions based on what's best for you, not out of fear of what he might do. You're right. I just need courage. You have more courage than you think. The proof is in everything you've already achieved. When they finally left that early morning, Victoria felt lighter than she had in months. Having someone who listened without judgment, who supported her without ulterior motives, was something she had forgotten existed. In the following days, Darnell noticed a subtle but significant change in Victoria. She seemed more determined, more focused. And when Maxwell showed up at the office one afternoon, bringing flowers and apologizing for a recent argument, Darnell saw something he had never seen before. Victoria looking at her husband with complete coldness. "Honey, I thought we could have dinner out tonight," said Maxwell, kissing her on the cheek. "At that Italian restaurant you like." "I have work commitments," Victoria replied without looking up from her papers. "You always have work commitments. Sometimes I think you love this company more than you love me." The irony of the statement didn't go unnoticed by Darnell, who was organizing some documents nearby. "Maybe because this company has never betrayed me," Victoria said calmly. Maxwell was clearly uncomfortable with the response. "Victoria, what's going on? You've been different lately." "I'm growing, Maxwell." "Maybe that's what you're noticing." After Maxwell left, visibly confused and irritated, Victoria looked at Darnell. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Strangely powerful, as if I've recovered something I had lost." "And what did you recover?" "My own voice." The transformation in Victoria accelerated in the following weeks. She began questioning not just her marriage, but many aspects of her life that she had passively accepted. She started meeting with her brother, Darren, who worked as a teacher at a public school in the outskirts. The reunion was emotional and painful. Darren welcomed her with love, but also with brutal honesty about how her choices had affected the family. "Victoria, you turned your back on who you were," he said during a lunch at the office. "I understand you wanted something better, but why did you have to cut all ties?" "Because I was afraid," she admitted, "afraid that they would discover the truth about me and reject me." "And you ended up being rejected for pretending to be someone else." "What do you mean? Maxwell doesn't love you, Victoria. He loves the version of you that you created. The real Victoria, the girl from the projects who fought to get where she is, that person he doesn't even know." Darren's words echoed in Victoria's mind for days. She began to realize she had built a prison for herself, maintaining a persona that not only distanced her from her roots, but also prevented her from forming genuine connections. It was then that she decided to do something Darnell had suggested weeks earlier: create a real inclusion program at the company, not just as a marketing strategy, but as a way to honor where she came from and help others like her. "I want to create scholarships for young people from the outskirts," she told Darnell one morning. "And I want to hire talented people regardless of background or traditional education." "That's an excellent idea. But are you sure you're ready for the consequences?" "What consequences?" "Some of your current clients might not approve. Maxwell certainly won't like it. Are you willing to lose some things to gain others?" Victoria looked out the office window, watching the city she had conquered through so much sacrifice. "Yes, I'm willing." The inclusion program was launched in December with an office party that brought together business people, educators, and young people from the outskirts. Victoria made sure to invite her original family, including Darren and some cousins she hadn't seen in years. During the event, Darnell watched Victoria interacting naturally with people from all backgrounds. It was as if she had finally found a balance between who she was and who she had become. "She looks different," commented Brianna, who was helping serve the guests. "She looks more like herself," Darnell agreed. "Dad, can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "Do you like Aunt Victoria?" The question caught Darnell by surprise. "Of course I like her. She's become a good friend." "No, Dad, I meant, do you like her?" Darnell looked at his daughter, realizing she had picked up on something he himself hadn't consciously admitted. "Brianna." "It's okay, Dad. I just wanted you to know that if you did, it would be fine with me and Jasmine. Aunt Victoria is a good person, and you deserve to be happy." The conversation left Darnell thoughtful. In recent weeks, he had noticed his feelings for Victoria had evolved beyond professional respect or friendship. There was a genuine connection between them, built through shared experiences and mutual understanding. But there was also the reality of their situations. She was still married, still dealing with betrayal and personal transformation, and he was her employee, someone who financially depended on her. The situation became complicated when Maxwell showed up at the event, clearly drunk and visibly upset about his wife's new phase. "Victoria, what kind of nonsense is this?" he said loudly enough for several people to hear. "Since when do you care about these people?" The silence that followed was awkward. Victoria turned to her husband with an icy calm that impressed everyone. "Maxwell, you're drunk. I suggest you go home." "I'm not going anywhere. This is my company too, and I won't let you turn it into some ridiculous social project." "This company is mine," said Victoria, her voice sharp as a razor, "and you have no right to speak to my guests that way." "Your guests?" Maxwell laughed bitterly. "Victoria, have you forgotten where you came from?" "Oh no, I forgot." "You always wanted to forget, didn't you?" The tension in the air was palpable. Darnell took a step toward Victoria, ready to intervene, but she raised her hand, signaling she could handle the situation. "Maxwell, you're right about one thing. I had forgotten where I came from, but I won't forget any more. And if that bothers you, the door is right there." "Very well," said Maxwell, swaying slightly. "But when you get tired of this social kindness phase, remember who stood by you when you were just a lost girl, pretending to be someone important." He stumbled out of the event, leaving behind an uncomfortable silence. Victoria remained motionless for a moment, clearly wrestling with her emotions. "We apologize for the incident," she finally told the guests. "Please, continue enjoying the party." Gradually, conversations started up again, but Darnell could see that Victoria was shaken. He discreetly approached her. "Are you okay?" "Strangely, yes," she said, seeming surprised by her own answer. "For the first time in years, I'm standing up for who I really am, not pretending to be someone else." "And how does that feel?" "Liberating and scary at the same time." That night, after all the guests had left, Victoria and Darnell were alone in the office, tidying up the last details of the event. "Darnell, can I ask you a question?" she said as they put away the last chairs. "Of course. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? Confronting Maxwell? Changing everything in my life?" Darnell stopped what he was doing and looked directly at her. "Victoria, you spent years living to please other people, trying to fit into a world that judged you for the wrong reasons. Now you're living by your own values. How could that be wrong?" "But what if I lose everything, the company, the house, the financial stability?" "You've lost everything once before and rebuilt. If needed, you can do it again. But this time, it would be building something real, not an illusion." Victoria moved closer to him, standing nearer than they had ever been. "Darnell, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "These past few weeks, talking with you, working alongside you, seeing how you handle challenges, made me realize something." Darnell felt his heart speed up. "What did you realize?" "That real connections are rarer and more precious than I imagined, and that I care about you much more than I should." The confession hung in the air between them. Darnell could sense the vulnerability in her voice, the courage it had taken to admit that. "Victoria, I know the situation is complicated," she continued quickly. "I'm still married, you work for me, there are practical and ethical issues involved, but I couldn't keep pretending I don't feel what I feel." Darnell took a step closer. "And what do you feel?" "That I've found someone who truly knows me, who saw me at my worst and didn't judge me, who helped me find who I really am." "Victoria, you know I care about you too, a lot, but you're right about the complications." "I know, and I'm not asking for answers right now. I just needed you to know." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the confession creating a new intimacy between them. "What do we do now?" asked Victoria. "Now you resolve your situation with Maxwell. Make the decisions you need to make for your own life, and I'll keep being your friend and supporting your choices. regardless of what else may or may not happen between us. And after? After, we see where life takes us. Victoria smiled for the first time all evening. Thank you for being honest with me. I always will be. They hugged, a long, tight embrace that sealed a new phase in their relationship. When they separated, both knew they had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. In the following weeks, Victoria took the necessary steps to confront her marital situation. She hired a divorce attorney, documented the evidence of Maxwell's infidelity, and prepared for the legal battle she knew was coming. The final conversation with Maxwell happened on a January afternoon in his office. Victoria arrived accompanied by her attorney, carrying a folder with all the evidence she had gathered. "Maxwell, we know about you and Sharon," she said bluntly. "I have photos, messages, witnesses. I won't waste time pretending ignorance." Maxwell paled but tried to maintain his composure. "Victoria, can we talk about this?" "There's nothing to discuss. I want a divorce, and you'll sign without contesting any clauses, or I'll make all the evidence of your infidelity public, including the misuse of corporate cards for meetings with your mistress." The threat was real, and Maxwell knew it. Victoria had discovered he used company cards to pay for hotels and gifts for Sharon, which constituted embezzlement. "What about the company?" he asked, making one last attempt. "The company is and always has been mine. You never had any legal stake in it. Your lawyers can verify that." Maxwell realized he had completely underestimated his wife. The insecure and dependent Victoria he knew had disappeared, replaced by a determined and prepared woman. "Very well," he said finally, "but I want you to know you're making a mistake. Without me, you'll go back to being that scared girl from the projects." Victoria stood up, looking at him with a mix of pity and relief. "Maxwell, you never really knew me. That girl from the projects was never scared. She was brave, determined, and capable of anything. It was years of pretending to be who you wanted me to be that made me forget that." She walked toward the door, then turned one last time. "Thank you for reminding me of who I really am." The divorce was finalized in March without major complications. Maxwell signed all the papers in exchange for confidentiality about the affair and a financial settlement that, while generous for him, represented a tiny fraction of Victoria's wealth. Throughout the process, Darnell maintained a professional and supportive stance, respecting the space Victoria needed to sort out her life. But both knew there was something unresolved between them, waiting for the right moment to be explored. The moment came on an April evening when Victoria invited Darnell to dinner at her house for the first time. It was an official friendship invitation, but both knew there were important subtexts. Victoria's house was elegant but surprisingly cozy. Darnell noticed family photos that weren't there when Maxwell lived in the house, including some from her childhood in the projects that she had hidden for years. "I'm redecorating," Victoria explained, serving wine, "removing everything that represented a life that wasn't mine, and putting in things that truly mean something to me." "And how does that feel?" "Like coming home after a long journey." They dined on the balcony, watching the illuminated city below. The conversation flowed naturally, touching on topics from philosophy to future plans. "Darnell, I need to tell you something," Victoria said during dessert. "What is it?" "The inclusion program we created has had results beyond my expectations. We already have 15 young people with scholarships. We've hired 8 people who came from backgrounds similar to mine, and 3 large companies want to develop similar programs with us. That's fantastic. You must be proud." "I am. But that's not all I want to talk about," she hesitated. "I want to expand the program, turn it into an independent foundation, and I want you to be the executive director." Darnell looked at her surprised. "Victoria, that's an incredible opportunity. But these are uncharted waters for both of us. That's exactly why I need someone I trust completely, someone who understands the vision and has the competence to execute it. And our personal situation. It would be an independent professional partnership. You would have full autonomy to manage the foundation, a salary commensurate with the position, and there would be no conflict of interest regarding other matters." Darnell recognized the elegance of the solution. Victoria was offering a way out of the hierarchical dilemma that kept them in unequal positions. "It's a smart way to solve multiple problems at once," he said. "Do you accept?" "I accept, but with one condition." "What?" "That we do this for the right reasons, not just to solve our situation, but because we truly believe in the project." "Darnell, this project represents everything I've always believed in, but was afraid to embrace for years. It's the embodiment of who I really am. Of course I believe in it. Then we have a deal." They toasted with wine, sealing another partnership, but when their gazes lingered longer than necessary, both knew they were celebrating more than just a professional decision. "Victoria, can I ask you a personal question?" said Darnell. "You always can. What do you want for your life now? After this whole transformation process, after the divorce, after finding who you really are?" Victoria thought about the question for a long moment. "I want honesty, in every aspect of my life. Relationships based on who I really am, not who people want me to be. I want to use my privilege to help other people who came from where I came from, and I want—" she hesitated. "Want what?" "I want the chance to discover what it's like to love someone who knows me completely, without masks, without games, without fear." The confession hung between them, full of meaning. "And you?" she asked. "What do you want?" "I want to build something bigger than myself. I want my daughters to see that it's possible to overcome any adversity with dignity, and I want to have the courage to open myself up to love again, even after everything I've been through." They looked at each other in silence, both understanding they had reached a turning point. "Darnell," said Victoria softly, "would you like to discover these things together?" In response, Darnell stood up and reached out his hand to her. When Victoria accepted it, he gently pulled her closer. "Victoria, are you sure? Because if we start this, there's no going back. Not for me." "I'm sure. For the first time in a long time, I'm sure about something." They kissed there on the balcony under the stars of Chicago, sealing not just a romance, but the union of two people who had found in each other the courage to be completely authentic. The months that followed were about building and discovery. The Roots Foundation, Rebuilding Through Inclusion, Zeal, Education and Sustainability, was officially launched in June, with Darnell as Executive Director and Victoria as Board President. Their collaboration proved natural and productive. Darnell brought technical knowledge and social sensitivity, while Victoria contributed business experience and networking. Together, they created an inclusion model that began being replicated by other companies. Personally, their relationship evolved organically and respectfully. Darnell kept his apartment and they met regularly, but without rushing to formalize anything. Both had learned the value of building solid foundations before making dramatic changes. Brianna and Jasmine loved seeing their father happy again. Victoria became a constant presence in their lives, not trying to replace the mother they had lost, but offering love and support in a completely different and valuable way. "Aunt Victoria," said Jasmine one afternoon while they were all organizing old photos for a foundation project, "you brought our dad back to us." "What do you mean, sweetie?" "Since Mommy died, Daddy was kind of lost. He worked, took care of us, but it was like a part of him had gone out. Now he's smiling for real again." Victoria was moved by the girl's observation. "You brought a part of me back too," she said. "You taught me that family isn't just about blood, but about choice and love." It was Brianna who asked the question everyone was thinking. "Auntie, are you going to marry Daddy?" Victoria laughed at the directness of the question. "Brianna, that's something your father and I need to decide together at the right time." "But would you want to?" "I'd want to very much, but the most important thing isn't getting married. It's continuing to build something real and healthy together." "And are you building it?" "We are. Every day." The answer satisfied the girls, who had learned to value stability and consistency more than grand gestures. In September, the foundation completed its first year with impressive results. 50 young people with scholarships, 23 people employed through the inclusion program, and partnerships established with 15 companies. To celebrate, Victoria and Darnell organized an event at the same place where it had all begun. the office where they met, but this time the space was completely transformed, full of photos of the program's beneficiaries, success stories, and plans for expansion. Darren, Victoria's brother, was present as one of the Foundation's educational coordinators. Dr. Tamara Williams, who had become a family friend, coordinated the preventive health program for the families served. Brianna, now 16, was the youth representative on the advisory board. During the event, Victoria gave a speech that summarized her journey. 2 years ago, I was a lost person, pretending to be someone I wasn't, mistreating people who didn't deserve it, and living a life that wasn't mine. It wasn't a sudden awakening that changed me. It was a gradual process of brave people showing me who I could really be. She looked directly at Darnell during the next part. I learned that courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about doing the right thing even when you're scared. It's about accepting help when you need it. It's about standing up for other people even when it might cost you something. And it's about allowing yourself to love and be loved in a real and honest way. The applause that followed was warm and sincere, but the most special moment of the night happened when one of the program's beneficiaries, a young woman named Shanice, who had just graduated in business administration, approached Victoria. Ms. Victoria, I want to thank you not just for the scholarship, but for creating a program that doesn't try to change who we are, but helps us be the best version of ourselves. Shanice, the credit is all yours. You did the work. But you created the opportunity, and you did something more important. You showed that it's possible to come from where we come from and get where we want to go without forgetting our roots or pretending to be someone else. It was exactly what Victoria had hoped to achieve with the foundation, and hearing it from Shanice herself was better than any official recognition. When the event ended and everyone had left, Darnell and Victoria stayed behind, tidying up the last details. It was a familiar scene. They had spent many nights like this, working together in comfortable silence. Victoria, Darnell said while putting away the last chairs, can I ask you a question? Always. Do you regret anything? About this whole process of change? About how things developed between us? Victoria stopped what she was doing and looked at him. Darnell, if you'd asked me that 2 years ago, I'd say I regret treating you badly at the beginning. That I regret wasting years pretending to be someone else. That I regret marrying Maxwell for the wrong reasons. And now? Now I understand that all of that was necessary to bring me here. To you, to this foundation, to this version of myself that I can finally like. So no, I don't regret anything. Regretting would mean denying the value of everything we've built. Even the painful parts, especially the painful parts. They taught me who I don't want to be, so I could discover who I truly am. Darnell approached her as he had done so many times in the past few months. Victoria, you've changed my life in ways you can't even imagine. You changed mine too. I'm not just talking romantically. I'm talking about making me believe that people can really change, that second chances exist, that it's possible to build something beautiful from difficult circumstances. And what else do you believe now? I believe we're ready for the next step. Victoria felt her heart race. What next step? Darnell knelt right there, in the office where it all began, and pulled a small box from his pocket. Victoria Parker, will you marry me? Not because we need to formalize anything, but because I want to spend the rest of my life building beautiful things by your side. Tears immediately welled up in Victoria's eyes. Darnell, I know it's an office, not the most romantic place in the world, but this is where we met, where you gave me a chance when I needed it most, where we built our friendship, our partnership, our love. It feels like the right place. Victoria looked around the space that had witnessed their entire transformation, the walls that had heard humiliation, tears, confessions, laughter, and now a marriage proposal. Darnell Johnson, of course I'll marry you. Not just because I love you, but because you taught me that true love makes us better people. It doesn't force us to pretend to be someone else. When he slipped the ring on her finger, they both knew they weren't just committing to each other, but to the version of themselves they had discovered together. The wedding took place in December, in a simple but meaningful ceremony. It was held at the Foundation's space, decorated with photos of all their journeys. Darren was the one who conducted the ceremony, using his authorization as a professor to officiate the union. Brianna was the maid of honor, Jasmine was the ring bearer, and Dr. Tamara was the matron of honor. On Darnell's side, his best friend from college and some colleagues from his engineering days who had reconnected were present. The most emotional moment was when Victoria read her vows. "Darnell, when we met, I was a broken person pretending to be whole. You were a person of integrity going through the worst time of your life. Together, we learned that true strength isn't about never falling, but having the courage to get back up, ask for help, and be better than we were yesterday. I promise to keep growing by your side, honoring our roots and building a future that honors everything we've been through. I promise to love your daughters as if they were my own, and to always treat them as the amazing women they already are." Darnell responded, "Victoria, you taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, but action in spite of fear. You taught me that people can change when they find real reasons to change. You taught me that love isn't about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone willing to grow together. I promise to always support you on your journey to be the best version of yourself. I promise to work by your side to build a better world for other people who are starting from where we started. And I promise to love you exactly as you are, where you came from, and where you're going." When they kissed as husband and wife, there weren't any dry eyes among the guests. It was more than a wedding. It was the celebration of two people who had found in each other the courage to be completely authentic. The party continued through the night with American music, homemade food prepared by Victoria's family, and stories shared about the extraordinary journey that had brought them there. At one point during the night, Victoria stepped away from the party and went out on the balcony to look out over the city. Darnell found her there a few minutes later. "Escaping your own party," he joked. "I just needed a moment to take it all in." "And how are you feeling?" Victoria looked at the ring on her finger, then at the man beside her, then at the party full of people who truly knew and loved her. "Complete. For the first time in my life, I feel completely at peace with who I am and where I am." And what comes next? Now we keep building. The foundation, our family, our love. One day at a time, with honesty and courage. Darnell hugged her from behind, and they watched the city that had witnessed their transformation. "Darnell," said Victoria, "thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me when I was invisible to myself, for defending me when I didn't deserve defense, for believing I could be better before I even believed it myself. Victoria, you did the same for me. You gave me hope when I had lost almost everything. You showed me that new beginnings are possible at any age. I guess we saved each other. I think we found each other." 6 months after the wedding, the Roots Foundation had expanded to 3 different cities. Victoria and Darnell worked together daily, but now as equal partners in every aspect of life. Brianna had been accepted into one of the country's best universities with a full scholarship to study communications. Her goal was to use media to tell stories of overcoming adversity like her family's. Jasmine, now 17, had decided to pursue medicine, inspired by Dr. Tamara. "I want to help people like Dr. Tamara helped our family," she said. "I want to be there for people's most important moments." One June afternoon, while Darnell and Victoria were reviewing proposals to expand the foundation to Los Angeles, Brianna came home with a serious expression. "Dad, Victoria, we need to talk," she said. "What is it, honey?" asked Darnell, immediately concerned. "Nothing wrong, but remember when I asked if you were going to get married?" "I remember," said Victoria, smiling. "Well, now I have another question. Do you want to have a baby?" Darnell and Victoria looked at each other, surprised by the directness of the question. "Why are you asking that?" Darnell wanted to know. "Because you're amazing together. Because Victoria would be a wonderful mother. Because Jasmine and I would love to have a brother or sister. And because you deserve to experience that together." It was a conversation Darnell and Victoria had had a few times, but always vaguely and distantly. Hearing Brianna put the question so directly made them realize they might be ready to seriously consider the possibility. "Is that something you'd really like?" Victoria asked the girls. Of course, said Jasmine, who had entered the room during the conversation. It would be amazing to have a baby in the family, and you two would be perfect parents. No one's a perfect parent, said Darnell, but it would be an interesting experience. Interesting, laughed Victoria. Darnell, you're talking about having a child, not a new hobby. I'm talking about continuing to build our family in the most beautiful way possible. That night, after the girls went to sleep, Darnell and Victoria had a long, honest conversation about the possibility of having a child together. Do you really want this? Asked Victoria. Not because of pressure from the girls or some social obligation, but because you want to? Victoria, I've already raised 2 amazing daughters. I know what it's like to be a father. I know the challenges and the joys. And yes, I would love to experience that with you. To see you pregnant, to be involved from the beginning, to raise a child that's literally part of both of us. And the foundation? The work? We can adjust. We have an excellent team, and children don't stop careers when there's proper planning. What if I'm a terrible mother? Victoria admitted. I've never taken care of a small child before. Victoria, you're already a mother to Brianna and Jasmine in every way that matters, and besides, you wouldn't be alone. You'd have me, the girls, our whole family we've built. The conversation continued for hours, exploring fears, expectations, and dreams. In the end, they both concluded that yes, they wanted to have a child together. 9 months later, Darnell Victoria Johnson Parker was born, a healthy boy who came into the world surrounded by love and anticipation. The choice of names was intentional. Darnell after his father, and Victoria to honor the mother who had wanted him so much. The delivery was attended by Dr. Tamara, who had become practically part of the family. Brianna and Jasmine were in the waiting room, eager to meet their brother. He's perfect, said Victoria, holding the baby for the first time. Look at him, Darnell, he's our son. Darnell was visibly moved. He has your eyes, he said, and apparently inherited my stubbornness, considering how hard he fought to be born. The baby opened his eyes at that moment, as if responding to his father's comment. It was a perfect moment, completing a family that had been built through challenges, growth, and true love. When Brianna and Jasmine were finally able to come in to meet their brother, the scene was pure emotion. He's so small, said Jasmine, gently touching the baby's hand. And so perfect, added Brianna. DJ, you're going to be so loved. DJ, asked Victoria. Darnell is too formal for a baby. DJ is more affectionate. And so little Darnell Victoria became affectionately known as DJ, the youngest of a family that had been formed through unlikely circumstances, but had become an example of love, growth, and second chances. 2 years later, the Roots Foundation had expanded to 10 American cities and begun receiving international interest. Darnell and Victoria had been invited to speak at universities about innovative models of social inclusion. But for them, the most important success was at home. DJ was taking his first steps, speaking his first words, and bringing constant joy to the whole family. Brianna was graduating in communications and had already secured an internship at a media company focused on social responsibility. Jasmine was in her senior year of high school, determined to pursue medicine as she had planned. Dad, said Brianna one Sunday morning as the whole family was having breakfast together, do you remember what life was like 5 years ago? Darnell looked around the table, Victoria pouring coffee, Jasmine helping DJ eat, the whole family gathered in a moment of peace and joy. I remember perfectly, and it's almost impossible to believe we made it here. And the best part, said Victoria, is that we made it by being ourselves, without pretending to be other people, without hiding who we are. Mom, said Jasmine, naturally using the title she had started using for Victoria after DJ's birth, do you think our story can inspire other people? I think it's already inspiring, replied Victoria. Every family that gets an opportunity through the foundation, every young person who gets a scholarship, every person who finds the courage to start over, our story is being retold in different ways every day. And the most important thing, added Darnell, is that it shows transformation is possible. that people can change, that second chances exist, that true love can happen in the most unexpected moments. "Daddy," shouted DJ, reaching his little arms toward Darnell. "And that families can be built in many different ways," said Darnell, picking up his son, "but all based on the same thing, unconditional love." That Sunday morning, seated around the breakfast table, the Johnson Parkers represented something far greater than just one family. They were living proof that prejudices can be overcome, that people can grow beyond their limitations, that true love transcends social and economic differences. They represented hope for anyone feeling lost, judged, or limited by circumstances beyond their control. They showed that with courage, honesty, and a willingness to grow, it's possible to build an authentic and meaningful life. And most importantly, they proved that the most beautiful happy endings aren't those where everything is perfect from the start, but those where imperfect people find strength in each other to become the best versions of themselves. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story of transformation, love, and second chances. Do you believe people can truly change when they find the right reasons? Do you know someone who went through a similar journey of self-discovery? Share your honest opinion in the comments with sincere words. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories that bring hope and show that it's never too late to start over.